Good morning. My name is Andrea Yates, and I'm a member of the Endowment Fund Committee. But I come to you today to ask you to join me in becoming a first-time donor to the Endowment Fund. While my family has always pledged the operating fund, and I've been a member of TVUC for over a quarter of a century now, it is just this year that I've made a donation to the Endowment Fund. This church community hosted our infants' dedication services, my late husband's memorial service, and the memorial garden provides one home for his memory, and it will mine as well one day for our children. I am at the stage in life where I can't give a substantial amount, but as Marion and David shared with us last week, every little bit helps, and now I've added my little bit. I hope you will join me so that our community will always be here, for those of us here now and those of us to come.
Hi, I'm Doris Gove.
And I'm Jeff Miller.
We joined the church in 1977.
Over the years, we found many ways to give back to the church. Teaching in the church school, serving on church committees.
Inspired by the native gardens at the North Shore Unitarian Church in Illinois, I asked the Endowment Committee to fund a native garden at TVUC. So now we have flowers, trees, butterflies, and more.
Please join us in supporting the TVUC Endowment Fund.
Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community. It's a time for joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationships together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms.
Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom. Lahitrayon, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
Oh, I am waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep. With blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. How can I change our course? Just a lonely voice. Wish I could lose myself in all the noise. But if we all would rise, a generation proud with a mighty song, we could turn this world around. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning tide. Ancestors all behind, and before me every child. I bring the power of a long unbroken line. So when our time is through, I want to know we did what we came to do for the future ones. So in our darkest days, may we all be strong and give our lives so light. May go on, on. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide.
A story to share today about Arun Gandhi, who tells the story about his own childhood when his family traveled to stay with his grandfather, Mohandas Gandhi, who's often known as Mahatma, a term of honor and respect given to him as a national and a spiritual leader of India. Now, this story takes place in the 1940s when Arun was 10 or 11 years old, and they went to stay with his grandfather in his service village. And Arun loved being there, but what he didn't love was that it was really hard to get any alone time with his grandfather. There were more than 300 people living in the service village with him. And it seemed that a follower or an aide was always around grandfather, making it really hard to have any alone time with him. And it was hard being a Gandhi, too. That was a lot to live up to. And Arun worried that he wouldn't be able to. During prayers, he sometimes got really fidgety. Do any of us ever feel fidgety sometimes? And he didn't speak Gujarati well yet. That was the language of the area, and he was trying to learn, and he had a tutor, but he felt like the tutor didn't think he was a very good learner. And sometimes Arun didn't feel like a Gandhi at all because peace and stillness did not come easily to him. Now, there wasn't electricity in the village, and so there weren't a lot of the things available for kids to do that we might think of. And Arun himself, he really loved when he was back home watching movies, but there were going to be no movies in the village. But the kids did play soccer, and Arun was glad about that. He was pretty good at soccer, and he was glad to head to the soccer field after his lessons were done each day. There he tried to forget about the rules of the ashram. He tried to forget about being a Gandhi. Now, the kids played hard as if the matches really mattered, and Arun was about to make a goal one afternoon when Suman, an older boy, shoved him. And Suman's feet stole the ball away from Arun as Arun tripped and fell face first on the ground and hit his lip, and it began bleeding. And Arun leaped up, his hands finding a rock, and he held it up, and he said, "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" And one of Arun's cousins said, "It was an accident, calm down." But Arun didn't want to calm down. He wanted to throw the rock. He wanted to hurt Suman like Suman had hurt him. But then he saw the other kids' faces, and he felt sure that he knew what they were thinking. They must be thinking, how could he, a Gandhi, be so quick to anger? And Arun dropped the rock and turned and ran straight to his grandfather's hut, where he burst in, but immediately was sure that he should not have come because his grandfather was at his desk with papers all around, and aid was nearby, and Arun felt that, oh yes, he was doing something important, much more important than he was. and so he began to back away to leave. And grandfather said, "Namaste." But he said it to the aide, not to Arun, politely dismissing the aide, and soon the two of them were alone. And grandfather said to Arun, "Tell me what has you so upset." And the story spilled out of Arun about the soccer field and the game and being pushed and the rock, everything. And when he was done, his head throbbed. Grandfather didn't have to say it. He would never live up to the Mahatma. He would never be at peace. But then his grandfather began to speak, and he said, "Arun, do you think that Suman and the other kids never anger? Do you think that they never feel as though injustice happens solely to them?" And he wiped away Arun's tears and said, "Arun, everyone feels anger." But that was not possible. Suman and the other kids, sure, no problem, but not grandfather. And so Arun said, "Even you?" "Even me," said his grandfather. Now, Arun's father had often said that Grandfather Gandhi was not one for riddles, but he was one for stories. And Arun was sure that a story was coming now, and he was not wrong. His grandfather began to say, "Arun, have I not told you how anger is like electricity?" And Arun shook his head. His grandfather continued, "It is. It can be like lightning, striking and splitting a living tree in two." And Arun in that moment saw himself on the soccer field, rock in hand, ready to strike. "Or," said his grandfather, "it can be channeled, transformed. A switch can be flipped and it can shed light like a lamp." And then Arun saw his grandfather speaking before thousands. When grandfather was angry, he didn't lash out. He worked to change things, not just for himself, but for everyone. "Then anger can illuminate," said grandfather. "It can turn darkness into light." "That's what you do," Arun said quietly, sure, though, that he could not do that himself. But his grandfather said, "Arun, we can all work to use our anger instead of letting it use us." And then the two of them stood together in the doorway of the hut, looking out over the service village, seeing all the people working as one. Grandfather had not told Arun that he was wrong. He hadn't told him that he was foolish. He hadn't even asked him to choose lightning or lamp. But Arun says that he did choose. And ever since then, like his grandfather, he has tried to live life as a light.
Incarnational Beatitudes by Nicole Anderson. This is a view of the Beatitudes that we need to realize in today's world. Blessed are the homeless and those who beg for spare change, for they shall inherit the house of the Lord. Blessed are the black mothers who lament the deaths of their sons at the hands of the state, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and pansexual individuals who reflect the very image of God, for they shall inherit the earth. And blessed are the undocumented worker whose labors are hard and whose fear of deportation is real every day, for they shall produce many fruits to sustain the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are the marchers who put their lives on the line, putting their faith into action and demanding mercy for all, for they too will receive mercy. And blessed are the disenfranchised children of Flint, Michigan, of the south side of Chicago, of the boroughs of New York, of Aleppo and Syria, of Haiti, of Zimbabwe, of Ethiopia, and all of the world, and of Knoxville, for they will see God. And blessed are the peacemakers, as named by Martin Luther King Jr., who continue to strive in making his dream a reality, for they will be called the children of God. And blessed are our Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, and First Nation siblings, and all other siblings of differing faiths who do justice, love, mercy, and walk humbly with their God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are those who are detained, deported, and unjustly held on account of showing radical love and grace in a world filled with violence and hate, for their reward will be great in heaven. Go in peace. Good morning. Welcome to Joys and Concerns. Joy! I want you to know that we have some members of our community who have successfully gone through a medical procedure, and we also have members of our community whose beloved pet has passed on. I ask you to hold members who are still healing in your thoughts and send them lights of joy and healing. And I ask you to also remember those who are also healing and trying to maintain in COVID, so that you know their emotional, their physical, their spiritual senses may be a little awry, but let us hold them up in prayer. Let us hold them up in our thoughts and send light to them. Let us hold them in our thoughts and remember that they are part of us and we are part of them, and that they know we offer them love, comfort, and even a laugh if they need one. Matthew 5, the Beatitudes speak of the spirit that we should have in our lives. Blessed are those poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the land. And blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And blessed are they that hunger and thirst after justice, for they shall have their fill. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And blessed are the clean of heart, for they shall see God. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And blessed are they that suffer persecution for justice' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are ye when they shall revile you and persecute you, and speak all that is evil against you untruly for my sake. Be glad and rejoice, for your reward is very great in heaven.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and ease. May I be whole.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration at TVUUC. Today is a Share the Plate Sunday. What that means is that any contributions that come in are split between the general operating budget of TVUUC and the organization for this Sunday. This Sunday's organization is RAM, Remote Area Medical, and you'll be seeing a video from them in just a few minutes. The ways you can give are to go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Once again, thanks for joining us. Have a blessed day.
A lot of these communities here, they don't get a lot of care that they need. They don't have access to care.
There's so many people out there without insurance that can't afford them, and they need help.
There's a lot of people that's suffering because they can't afford to go to a doctor because they can't afford the insurance.
Without this sort of an event, they wouldn't get the help.
You can't put a price tag on what we're doing in these clinics and the care we're giving and the impact it has on people's lives.
Remote Medical is it's a nonprofit. We travel around and we set up mobile medical clinics. We do these around the country from coast to coast, and we provide all the services at free of cost to the patients that are coming through the doors.
Originally, of course, Remote Area Medical was organized for the purpose of going to third world countries. I found myself in a place in South America called British Guiana, and I was very badly injured. They pulled me out from underneath the horse, and one of them said, well, the nearest doctor is 26 days on foot from here. And so that was really the beginning. Eventually learned to fly an airplane. I was able to fly in medical supplies. Came to the conclusion that maybe we needed to bring the doctors a little bit closer than 26 days on foot. Years later, ended up here in the United States. And to my surprise, I found that there were millions of people that didn't have access to the health care that they needed.
RAM is important because it fills a gap. The need for health care is out there across America, whether you're in Appalachia or whether you're in Los Angeles. We see the same thing from community to community.
We brought it to the community knowing there was a need, but not having any idea how great the need was. It wasn't a question as to whether or not we would bring it back.
These clinics are designed for locals to come through the community. They're able to receive medical, dental, or vision care.
Even though many of them are working, many of them have health insurance, that's an area that's not covered by insurance for many, many policies.
This is wonderful. I mean, to have something like this, to provide the health care that people need to prevent tooth loss, to prevent breast cancer.
Free health care, totally free, no questions asked.
It's really going to change their lives, and it's going to change their lives in a good way for a long time.
RAM is an opportunity for someone to give back and to take part.
I was so impressed with the first clinic that I went to. I came back a renewed person. I would strongly encourage all medical professionals to consider volunteering. Here you are free to provide medicine and give the very best care you possibly can to people who truly need it.
Even if you have no medical experience, you can come into a medical clinic and provide a service that really touches the lives of people.
What we do, of course, is a very expensive operation. Our support comes mainly from those $10 and $15 donations from the general public.
To get involved, it's actually through our website at ramusa.org. Someone can sign up as a volunteer. Again, they do not need any medical experience.
It's a real privilege to work with Remote Area Medical.
I'd like to invite you to volunteer at future clinics and fund future efforts by going to ramusa.org so together we can make an impact in our communities. And thank you again.
Making people angry is a growing industry. There's a whole lot of money to be made in making people mad. Making people angry becomes part of the business plan, part of the business model, part of the business strategy. If someone can make you mad, then they can make you tune into their radio station or change the channel on your television to their program or click on their website. If someone can make you angry, then they can make you buy their product or shop with their advertisers or join their political party, support their candidate, or join their cause. If people can make you angry, they can manipulate you quite easily. Now, there are some things we should be angry about. There are things in the world that should make us angry. We should be angry about injustice, angry about oppression. There are many things we should be angry about. And yet, if our goal is freedom, and as we say in the Unitarian Universalist Church, if our faith is freedom, then we have to find some way to free ourselves and to free our minds from the anger industry. The Catholic monk, the great Catholic monk, mystic, and social activist Thomas Merton put it this way: the greatest need of our time is to clean out the enormous mass of mental and emotional rubbish that clutters our minds and makes all our political and social life a mass illness. Without this house cleaning, we cannot begin to see, and unless we begin to see, we cannot begin to think. So in order to find peace from the anger industry, we've got to do a little house cleaning. We've got to begin to be able to see before we can begin to be able to think and begin to be able to act. Now, most of us will never become monks or nuns. Most of us will never be cloistered in a monastery as Thomas Merton was. However, we could all benefit from finding times of personal retreat where we cut ourselves off from the radio, cut ourselves off from television, cut ourselves off from social media, cut ourselves off from the anger industry. We could all find creative new ways to find peace in our world, peace from the anger industry. So we all need to be prepared to do a little house cleaning. Only this house cleaning is in our minds. We need to free our minds so the rest will follow. Free our minds from the anger industry. Because Thomas Merton was right. Our social and political lives have become a mass illness, and anger has become a pandemic. In the 1960s, there were a lot of agitators, and many times they were grassroots organizers. They were agitating for peace. They were agitating for civil rights. They were agitating for labor justice or social justice in some way. Today, the agitators have corporate sponsors and dark money interests. And so we need to free our minds from that professional, for-profit approach to agitation. In ancient times, the agitators were prophets, people like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Micah. But today, the agitators seem mainly interested in making profits off our anger, making profits off our anxiety, making profits off our fear, making profits in order to advance their own agenda. So we need to take our minds back. We need to reclaim our own peace of mind. Because the goal of an agitator is to get inside your head. And that's why a lot of professional wrestlers and boxers engage in trash talk. The idea is to defeat an opponent in their head before the opponent even gets on the field or in the ring. The goal is to defeat us in our head. Because if we're agitated, we might not be thinking clearly. If we're agitated, we might just be irritable and lose our balance or lose our footing. If we are agitated, we might just be off our game. So the goal is to get inside of someone's head, and so that that person is easier to defeat. So finding peace from the anger industry. It's not about quitting. It's not about surrender. It's not about leaving the field. Finding peace from the anger industry can make us more effective activists in the world, more effective citizens in the world. Finding peace from the anger industry can be another way to say, game on.
Have you ever noticed that when we're angry, we can be our own worst enemy? In the Sufi Muslim tradition, there is a trickster character known as Bilal. And the story goes that Bilal was, one day he died, and he was trying to figure out where his ultimate destination would be. So he decided to go to hell as a process of elimination. And when he got to hell, there was a guardian at the gate. And he walked up to the guard and said, I'm Bilal. Is this where I'm supposed to be? And the guard looked him up and down and said, no, I don't think this is where you're supposed to be. Maybe you ought to go check out heaven and see what that's like. And Bilal was walking off when all of a sudden he sort of looked around and he said, this isn't exactly how I pictured hell. I'd always heard that hell was a place of eternal hellfire and brimstone, but I don't see any fire anywhere. And the guard said, oh, that's because when people go to hell, they have a tendency to bring their own fire with them. So if we are angry and miserable, if we are in hell, it is usually because we brought our own fire with us. Now, there are many forms of anger that are good. There is the forms of anger that spur us to take action, to do good in the world. But there are also many forms of anger that do a lot of damage to us, that really harm us. If we are angry people, there's a lot of evidence that living an angry life puts us at high risk of heart disease, raises our blood pressure. One of the things that living with a lot of anger over a period of time can do, it releases stress chemicals. And these stress chemicals are meant to be for short-term action. They're supposed to be for fight or flight, to take quick action to keep you or others safe. But if we live angry lives all the time, these stress chemicals are released all the time, and they can do terrible, terrible damage to our bodies. So anger is often a form of self-punishment. It's a way of putting ourselves into hell. Now, there's a story that's told in Japan about a samurai warrior who approaches a Shinto priest and says, I've been talking to Christian missionaries, and they often speak about heaven and hell. So what does the Shinto tradition have to teach us about heaven and hell? And so the Shinto priest immediately started insulting the warrior, calling him terrible names, insulting his family. And the warrior started to draw his sword. And as he drew his sword, the Shinto priest said, that is hell. And the Shinto warrior started to put his sword back into his sheath. And the priest said, that is heaven. And so our anger can either be hell, and letting go of our anger can be heaven. This week, we said goodbye to, in a memorial service for Alandria Williams, who was an activist who we all knew had incredible power to turn her anger into action. And she got her training as an activist at the Highlander School. And Miles Horton, who is the founder of the Highlander School, wrote this autobiography where he described his own understanding of anger and the work for social justice. And I read it not so much to remember Miles, but to reflect on Alandria and her work. Miles wrote, I had to turn my anger into a slow burning fire instead of a consuming fire. You don't want the fire to go out. You never want the fire to go out. And if it ever gets weak, you stoke it. But you don't want that fire to burn you up either. The fire keeps you going, but you must subdue it, because if you don't, the fire will destroy you. Susan B. Anthony, the suffragist, once described her own anger as a divine discontent. And the song we heard earlier in the service talked about a blessed unrest. I think what both the suffragist and the song are trying to describe is that fire, which is like a fire in an old-timey locomotive. It doesn't burn up the train. Instead, it's a slow-burning fire that fuels the engine that keeps us moving forward. And that is what we need to aspire to, a fire that fuels our efforts to make a difference and does not burn us up. There's a reading in the back of our hymnal by Ralph Waldo Emerson where he says, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. Whatever dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we worship, we are becoming." I think that what's true of what we worship is also true of what makes us angry. Just as we have a tendency to become like the things we worship, we have a tendency to become like the people and things that make us angry. I think it has to do with the power of where we focus our attention. And so we need to be very careful on how we focus our attention. And one of the ways we can regulate our anger and help fuel it for social change is to spend less time on what we hate and more time focusing on what we love. Instead of focusing on the elected leader that makes our blood want to boil, we can focus on the leaders who inspire us and give us hope. Instead of focusing on the political party we hate, we can focus on the political party or social justice organization that we love. Instead of focusing on the beliefs we find reprehensible, we can focus on the ideals that inspire us. Focus less on what we hate and more on what we love. Now, a wise person once said to me that firefighters don't hate fire. Instead, firefighters tend to respect fire and study it and learn from it in order to be in a better position to protect the people and communities they love. The focus is not on hate, but on love. And so I think that is a good place to come from for our spiritual and emotional and psychological health. There's a story that's told about a man who is angry at God. He shakes his fist at God and says, "Why is there hunger in the world? Why is there people without health care? Why are there so many problems in the world? Why won't you do something about it? I'm so angry." And God said, "I am doing something about it. I am making you angry." In that way, our anger can be fueled into action. But I think it helps if our anger is informed by love. If we are angry about racism and white supremacy movements, we can focus on what we love, like the Children's Diversity Library here at the church. If we're angry about hunger, we can channel our volunteer energy into delivering groceries through the fish program with our friends. If we're angry about people without health care, we can support remote area medical, and we can work for systemic efforts to work for universal health care for all people. Don't obsess on what we hate so much as be empowered by what we love. If we can do this, then we can free our minds and the rest will follow. And together we can make faith part of our business plan, hope part of our strategy, and love part of our business model. We can be blessed with a divine discontent, and we can be informed by holy unrest, even as we find peace from the anger industry.
Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the servant of truth. Question your convictions, for beliefs too tightly held strangle the mind and its natural wisdom. Suspect all certitudes, for the world whirls on and nothing abides. Yet in our inner rooms full of doubt, inquiry, and suspicion, let a corner be reserved for trust. For without trust, there is no space for communities to gather or friendships to be forged. Indeed, this is the small corner where we connect and reconnect with each other.
So now it's time to get off your computers and go out into the world. And send an email or a text message or come to our virtual coffee hour or find some other ways to connect as a community. Even though we are separated by social distance, keeping each other safe, we can stay connected as the beloved community. Go in peace.
Oh, I am waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep.